Hello, beautiful, beautiful people. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you are tuning into. If this is your first time seeing my face, hearing my voice, I am Alante Collier, founder of Streamline and Scale, the leading full service operations management agency where we focus on doing three things: scaling profits, increasing impact, and sustaining success. And today, y'all, we have our very special guest expert who's going to be talking and diving into legal protection for timer CEOs. So if you guys are tuning in live, hello, we have Tampa in the house. I love it.
Hey.
If you're tuning in live, go ahead and comment down below, hashtag live, hashtag replay. And let me go ahead and step myself out of the way and introduce our special guest. Queen, go ahead. Take it away.
Yes. Thank you for the intro. Hello, everyone. My name is Liku Amadi, founder and attorney of Vanessa Law Firm, where I work with online coaches, consultants, and strategists to help them establish a solid legal foundation for business through contracts, trademarks, and entity formation. A lot of that involves legal strategy, so I'm excited to talk about what that looks like for time-rich CEOs.
Let's do it, y'all. And we are in for a treat. A couple of disclaimers. Y'all are getting the real, raw.
I think what she was about to say is y'all are getting the real, raw, live in action, working from home, online, remote entrepreneur lifestyle where technology fails you. And then it comes back just like that.
Lord, like I said, y'all are getting.
Sentence.
Thank you, Queen. Thank you. Y'all are getting the real raw content because there's a little bit of some technology connectivity issues, but we're going to keep it going because, Liku, I would love to first get into your story first. How does someone like you get into the legal industry? How did you get to where you are today? Tell us all about the magic, the good stuff.
Yeah, magic and good stuff, girl. I don't know about that. No, I'm just kidding. But I've always wanted to be a lawyer for as long as I could remember. I like to argue, and I thought law school would help me polish that. But that became more of wanting to help the Black community because we don't have a lot of access to, legal resources and lawyers. And the way we do see legal in our lives is not in the best sense, right? Police brutality, criminal charges, like lack of trust, all of that. So I went to law school so I could gain that knowledge and that expertise and leverage it to benefit my people in my community. And as an online business owner myself, I transitioned from corporate first. I had two corporate jobs where I was an associate working under other people. When the pandemic hit, I had just started what I thought was my dream law firm job. I was like, I'm about to come in here, get this money, pay off these student loans. And quickly, we were working from home, and I realized like this is not the quality of life that I want. It's not worth it. I'm too young. So let me go ahead and start my own venture. So I went ahead and did that March of 2021 in my first trimester. So another work from home, real and raw. You'll probably hear my son in the background. And that's just how we're doing it. So I love where I'm at now. I love being able to work for myself. I appreciate the experience that corporate gave me. And now I get to define what a lawyer looks like in my community.
I love that. I love that. And let me go ahead and give you your flowers, Queen, because we're all about giving flowers here. But one, being able to pivot during the pandemic and being able to build your business while pregnant and be able to pour back your knowledge, your gifts, your talents back into the community with passion. Girl, one, that's not easy. Okay. So I salute you. And two, I thank you. Thank you for definitely doing that and for your mission as well.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So let's first get into our first topic. And this is more so for those who still working in the corporate 8 to 5, 9 to 5 life, looking to transition out, but you may be kind of curious or have questions about how do you make sure you're protected as you're transitioning out of that corporate life into entrepreneurship. So first question for you is, what are some things that those in a 9 to 5 life right now working a job, what are some things they should be on the lookout for or have in place as they're transitioning out of that job?
Yeah, happy to answer that question. Let me first remind y'all, I am a licensed attorney. Anything I say here is not legal advice. It is legal information for educational purposes only. If you need legal advice, you need to engage with an attorney so they can address issues and questions specific to you. Now, with that being said, yeah, considerations for making that transition, because that's where a lot of us start. We still have our 9 to 5, and we're either building or planning to leave the 9 to 5 and jump into a new business. So, and I'll preface that also with saying that it's so easy to start a side business these days. Like, you literally just need a phone and some Wi-Fi. You got something to sell, you good, right? Just a digital project. Like, it's a digital product. It doesn't take much. It's not setting up shop in a brick and mortar, permits, red tape, and whatnot. But just because that's the case doesn't mean that there's still protocol, that there isn't protocol that we need to follow. So if you still have a job, and every employer is different, number one, I would definitely suggest looking at the employee handbook, because what the employee handbook is going to tell you is about how to conduct yourself as an employee. And that includes having other ventures or businesses, right? And this really depends on the nature of your job. Like, if you're in some more like management or like executive role, or a role where you are hands-on developing like products and technology, that's a lot different than like a customer service role, right? So it really depends on the nature of your job and your position. But looking at your handbook will tell you how you're supposed to conduct yourself as an employee. And that includes having other businesses, having other ventures while you're an employee, and then starting new ones, right? Some jobs require that you report to them if you already have jobs, or other jobs or other businesses when you start with them, right? Some people want to know that. Some other jobs require that you report to them when you do start those things, right? So really just wanting to know, what do I need to do to be in compliance with my role as an employee while I'm starting this business, so you don't overstep or misstep or just make any mistakes that could cost you your job or your business, right? Because if you're doing both, usually you have your job as that security, and we need all the security we could get starting out as business owners, right?
Absolutely.
So that's number one. Definitely look at your handbook. Number two, another thing that your handbook and your employee contract will tell you is who owns your intellectual property, right? And this is important for people who have jobs and want to go into business. It want to open a business that is similar to what they're doing in their job, right? So if you have a particular expertise, let's say you're doing some type of sales management or training in your day job, and you want to come out and be a sales consultant, you develop a framework and whatnot. You want to know, like, when you are developing these new things or creating intellectual property frameworks, digital products, like all of those things, right? Who does it belong to? If it's related to, if it's within the scope, they say, of your job, then does it belong to them? Because some companies will say, hey, when you're working for us, anything that you create, that belongs to us, right? Some jobs won't be that specific, but then, and I've talked to people, this has happened to some of my clients, where they find themselves in a position, and this is number three, watch who you talk to about your business, right? You find yourself in a position where somebody does come and say, hey, like, that's really dope what you created right there. Like, come up off that, right? Like, let's see what that's talking about. Was this using our resources, our time, like, the education and training that we provided you? Like, all of that matters. So just in a nutshell, look at your employee contract, look at your employee handbook, know what you need to do and what you need not to do when starting a business. Be very aware of how your intellectual property is handled, because those are the money makers in our business. And then watch who you talk to, because Not everyone has good
Mm,
intentions. Some people may have good intentions and then just be, passing on what you said, and it could
mhm.
get to the wrong person. So those are the things that I would say, those three things.
I love that. That's so good. And y'all, if you're tuning in live, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments because this is
Mhm.
so good. And I don't want to go to the next one until we fully understand what happens if you don't look at your employee handbook and look at that.
Mhm.
Because there's someone in the community who's been working for someone for a number of years, and their employer found out that they had this business, and then all of a sudden she's now out of a job. Now she's out of
Mhm.
her career. And now, luckily, she has her business to fall off on, right? But what if she didn't? What if she did? They say that
Mhm.
you're having your job as like one of the best solid investors, and it is. But in order to protect that, make sure you're listening and doing what Liku was saying. Look at your employee handbook. Make sure you're covered. Make sure you're protected. Okay, because you're building generational wealth. Okay, protect that. Um,
Absolutely.
Yes. So for those who are now, I guess, looking into becoming that full-time entrepreneur,
Mhm.
as they're transitioning out, and now let's say now they've separated from their company, from their job, right? So
Mhm.
what are some things in place? Now we can kind of talk about the assets, the tangibles. What are some
Mhm.
things in place for these new entrepreneurs to be protected? Like contracts, maybe having a legal counsel and retainer on their payroll. Well, what does that kind of look
Mhm.
like for these new business owners that are now completely separated from their employer?
Yeah, it's usually idea to have counsel on retainer, or just that go-to attorney to continuously check in with and say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this issue, but also, hey, I have this new service I want to offer. What do I have to do to make sure I protect it? Or can I offer it in this way?" Right? So not just to be reactive to issues, but mostly to be proactive in how you're building your business. So for business owners who are starting out, however, that's usually not the go-to, and I say so from experience working with business owners at different levels. But
Mhm.
what is important is what you said, contracts, right? Contracts are super duper important. I always say that a contract is the foundation of your client relationship. So I don't care what your
Mhm.
branding looks like, I don't care what your marketing strategy looks like, I don't
Yeah.
care, whatever you spent like on your website. If you don't have a contract that can clearly and just very articulately outline what you and your clients are going to be doing together, then
Mhm.
that's an L, right? You're setting your business up for a lot of risk regarding your intellectual property, risk regarding money that person
Yes.
is spending to invest in you, right? And as a business owner who is just transitioning or just starting out, maybe you don't have a lot of money to be able to lose, right? So
Mhm.
having a contract that clearly articulates what you're responsible for, what your client is responsible for, what you're going to be delivering for your client, right? How you're going to be working together, communication, refund policies, who owns what intellectual
Yes.
property. There's so many different elements that are each purposeful and important when working
Mhm.
with a client. And so your contract is your home base for working with the client. So most critical piece of a client relationship and you delivering services, right? Your contract.
Mhm.
Second, I would say is a business entity, whether it's an LLC or a
Mhm.
corporation. And I'll also clarify quickly that some people say, like, should I get an LLC or an S corp? That an S corp is not a business entity; it is a tax designation. So you can be an LLC and be taxed as an S corp, right? And I just throw that out there because I just see the misconception a lot. So
Mhm.
having a business entity will protect those personal assets of yours, right? Listen, you just starting a
Absolutely.
job. We're trying to get some business assets. So you want to hold on real tight to the personal assets. So, it would be
Yes.
that wall of separation between the two. Um, the nature of your services, depending on the nature of your services, I would also
Mhm.
say disclaimers are super important. If you're some type of licensed professional like
Yes.
myself, right? Just making sure I use disclaimers saying that, hey, again, everybody, this is legal education and information only for educational purposes, right? Not
Mhm.
legal advice, like making sure you cover yourself. And that's just not when we're doing lives, but that's on social media. when you're making posts, or when you're popping up on podcasts, or when you're doing guest speaking scenarios, right? Just making sure that you protect yourself wherever you go. And then lastly, but certainly like just not, the bulk of everything. Like these are just important things. So there's a lot of things
Yeah.
to consider. But lastly is just, again, intellectual property, your frameworks, like your catchphrases, all of those things that you use as assets in your business, those money making
Yes.
assets, need to be protected. Just like you said, generational wealth. I always say, like, some inch of our body, we definitely started our businesses to pass down that wealth, right? To create
Yeah.
and be able to pass down that wealth. And we can't pass it down if we don't protect it.
Mm,
So those are the things that I would say. And I'll add just a bonus because we are in the online business space. So just
absolutely.
making sure that your website is protected, right? You have like your privacy policy when you're out here collecting emails and phone numbers for text messages. You have your terms of use. You got terms of use for your digital products.
Mhm.
And then also with that, understanding whatever you host your business on website platforms or even social media platforms, what their terms and conditions say, because you don't want to be
Yeah.
in a situation where you're basically in someone else's house and you don't know the rules. And then one day, didn't Instagram go down just yesterday? Like,
Yes.
God forbid, you have some things on there and like they shut down and you don't have access to it anymore. Or
Yeah.
even platforms like Canva, like in their terms and conditions, it says like, look, we could revoke your account at any time. And if you got 90
Mhm.
days of content stored on Canva, how you gonna feel about that, right? So again, just knowing like whose house you're in is also super important. I know I said a lot, so I'll
Yes.
stop there.
And we have some questions, but I want to make sure I captured what you just said
Mhm.
because, yes, the contracts, having that in place, absolutely, absolutely. The business entity, making sure that you're protected, your personal assets are protected as well. Having your IP in place, absolutely. Trademarks, making sure all of that is protected. Disclaimers, make sure you're protected. If you do a lot of speaking, if you're a community leader, if you have an audience that's growing, right? You never know who could tune into anything that you have going on, and one sentence could be the detriment of what you've built. So I love this. And there's a question here, and then I want to go into contracts because I know that there's this whole discussion of using contract templates from LegalZoom and operating, like all of this, right? But before we get into
Yeah.
that, let's first talk about this question here. And so someone says, I have an LLC for my online business, but I'm moving to focus more on my real estate business. Since I'm no longer going to be focusing on growing my real estate business, should I get a separate LLC or is it okay to roll it underneath the one I have?
So, great question. And my blanket answer to that is going to be it depends. And even before that, I'm going to say the way that this question is phrased is asking for legal advice because you're talking about yourself specifically, right? So I can't answer the question.
Okay, the
This
question came
is,
from,
oh, saying who they are. Yeah,
yeah.
I can't answer the question the way that it's phrased because you are asking for legal advice. And so if that's something that you need, I do offer a legal strategy session where we can work through that together for up to 90 minutes. But I do want to give a general answer to this. So I have my LLC for my online business moving forward, moving to focus more on my real estate business. The way LLCs work, right? And again, this is just general information, but it is related to your question. The way that LLCs work is it protects that it protects your assets as it pertains to that business, right? So if I have a cupcake shop, right, Cupcakes LLC, whatever umbrella of liability, if something happens, if somebody gets poisoning from my Cupcakes LLC, my cupcake shop, then they're going to come after the LLC, and whatever assets I have available in that LLC will be on the line, right? So underneath that, if I'm also like, Aprons LLC, because obviously I'm not the person to come up with business names. But if I'm like Aprons LLC, where I'm selling aprons with cupcakes on them, right? Like I got a little clothing line for my cupcake shop, but it's a separate line of business, but I put it under my LLC. Like right? Two businesses under one LLC, that same umbrella of liability is going to apply. So again, if someone gets cupcake poisoning, those assets, that money I'm bringing in from my cupcake shop and my apron sales are going to be online, versus if I have Cupcakes LLC and then I have Aprons LLC, two different LLCs. When somebody gets poisoning from the cupcakes, they're only coming after my cupcake assets, and my apron sales are apron sales, can't believe that. But my apron sales are protected because it's in a different bubble of liability. Vice versa, if I was to, let's say, be selling some aprons and they have like some really bad cotton in them, or people are getting a rash, let's just make up that scenario, somebody want to sue, then it's only those sales that are online. And then my cupcake sales from my cupcake shop are protected. So that's how having different LLCs work. They're different, just bubbles of liability when it comes to issues. I hope that helps. Again, if you need specific advice, please DM me. I'll send you a link to book with me. But that's generally how those LLC bubbles work. And when people want to start multiple businesses or have multiple streams of income, that question comes up a lot. How do I structure this? Maybe you have a business and then you have digital products and online courses you want to sell, and that's a different stream. Maybe you want it to be a separate LLC, right? Again, you have a clothing line, you can have journals or anything like that. You just want to make sure you understand, and this is why legal advice is important, but what is specific to your circumstances. Because if I'm coming to someone and I'm just like, you know what, my apron sales are booming, this is going to be the money maker right here, then I'm sorry, if someone's coming to me saying that, then I would probably say, you know what, then if you don't know about the cupcake shop, or that's kind of up in the air, or it's not really your focus right now, then with the aprons, you want to protect that. If you see a six-figure, $1 million business soon in the future, maybe you don't want to lump those together. Maybe you want to partner with a distributor or an investor or something like that, right? And then maybe again, you want your separate LLC. So that's just how that works, quick little masterclass on that.
I love that. I love that. That was a great question, Miss Burks. And she said that she will also DM you. There's a couple of more. I'm loving that y'all are asking these questions. I love it. I love it. Let me first say hello. Hello, y'all tuning in. Hello, Miss Patricia. Hello, Maisie. We have another question here. It says, with regard to legal protection, what's the difference between LLC and incorporating a business? Good question.
Yeah, so an LLC versus a corporation, with regard to legal protection, both of them protect you. Both of them provide that liability protection, in that if something were to happen, then it's your business that takes a hit, and it protects your personal assets from being hit. The difference between the two is the structure, right? So not really with regard to liability protection, but just how they're set up. Corporations generally have more requirements, more upkeep, more documentation required. And again, depending on the type of business that you want to get into, investors usually like to see that you have a corporation, which comes with bylaws and governance, etc. An LLC doesn't require as much. And I'll also say that these are state-specific entities. So California LLCs and California corporations are different than Delaware LLCs, Delaware corporations, Texas LLCs, Texas corporations. So that's important as well.
Great question. One question that I got offline was, what are the dangers of using contract templates, or using templates in general? I think there's Law Depot and LegalZoom and things like that. What are the dangers of some things you've seen to be on the lookout for when it comes to this?
Man, we could have did this whole live on contract templates and my thoughts. The dangers, there are a lot of dangers associated with using things that are not designed for your business, not designed to protect you, designed for mass consumption, right? So when people come to me to revamp their contracts, they're usually working off of a template, or they bring me something where, they've remixed themselves, but it started as a template. And what templates are, they're a quick fix, right? There's a lot of templates out there, a lot of template shops, templates sold by lawyers, but you'll see that even in, in the documents or, whatever the terms and conditions, when they sell those things, there's always a disclaimer. This is not legal advice. Like, talk to a lawyer to make sure this contract fits your business needs, right? And that right there just highlights that this is just a Band-Aid, right? A Band-Aid. And so what I've seen when you talk about dangers is, people not being people just plugging information in to the extent where they're forcing their business to fit into the contract template versus building the contract around their business. And when you think about other elements of our business, that's not how we do it. When it comes to operations, right? We make it around our business. Like, we don't take our business and say, ooh, look at this operations model. Let me force it and try to make it fit, because there's going to be some type of breakdown, right? It's not really going to 100% meet your needs. Same thing like with the marketing strategy or anything else, right? Anything templated is not designed for us. So there are red flags that are left open. We don't have the opportunity to thoroughly protect our intellectual property, because while there may be a statement or two in the contract template, I'm working on a contract right now, and the IP section so far is half a page, right? And that's because we're identifying the intellectual property, telling the other person how they can use and not use the intellectual property, under what circumstances they can use it in a certain way, when we get the right to revoke, right? So there's all of these details that are just not considered because the contract is designed for mass consumption. That means not communicating to your client how your business works because your contract doesn't reflect that. That means leaving more opportunities for disputes, miscommunications, and all those things lead to refunds, chargebacks, and just unhappy clients. And then you, as a business owner, you kind of like, I don't know if I want to sign on these new 5 clients who are knocking down my door, because I don't feel comfortable with the foundation that I have to support them in my contract, right? So it's a whole ripple effect. I definitely advocate for custom contracts, for sure.
Love it. Love it. Y'all, if you have any more questions, go ahead and comment them down below, because we're getting ready to wrap up. But as you guys are doing that, Queen, please talk about what services, what do you have available for those who's looking? I know you mentioned a 90-minute strategy session. What other services do you have available for those who's looking for legal counsel to tap in and access with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So contracts are my bread and butter, client contracts to be specific. So really, again, going to not taking the templated approach, but designing a contract that captures the specificity of someone's services, how they run their business, their policies, what they want from their client, what they need from their client, protecting their assets. So first, strategizing, what that looks like ideally in their business, and then 2, drafting that, and then also supporting them with retainer services specifically to those contracts and contracts related scenarios, such as like client disputes, requests for refunds, or, I have this really one-off client, so we need to revamp the contract, and we'll do that. So definitely contract drafting, contract review, and support services through a retainer. Like I said, the 90-minute legal strategy session, and that's for people who just want to identify, like, where am I at in business? Where am I at with my contracts? I'm about to take, this major pivot. How do I protect my intellectual property, or what do my online assets look like, right? So strategizing how to go from A to B in a specific scenario. And so that's a really good starting point for people. And then also, like I said, I filed trademark applications and California LLC formations as well for business owners starting out. So that is how I can support people with my legal services.
I love it. I love it. I love it, y'all. Thank you. Thank you, Queen, for sharing your gems, your time, your experience, your knowledge. Y'all, if you haven't had a chance to connect with this Queen, make sure you do, okay? Especially if you've been in business for a year or 2, you've been working with the same contract, haven't revamped it, haven't looked at it since. Now is your chance to do so, especially before the new year comes on in, okay? We have a lot of thank yous. I love it. I'm glad that y'all enjoyed today.
Can I add one more thing, Queen? Just one more.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned like Legal Zoom, Rocket Lawyer, I think it's like Law Depot.
Yeah.
So I just want to make a comment as to those things, because for business owners starting out, again, like, legal counsel maybe not isn't in the budget or isn't at the priority yet, even though it should be. But in circumstances
Absolutely.
where people feel like, well, dang, like I need something in place, like I can't afford to have an attorney in my back pocket yet. When they're looking at those options, what I would suggest is just making sure that you are talking to an attorney, because a lot of those options, they'll hook you up with a secretary or a paralegal, or they won't talk to you, but they'll do work for you. And I think the best route is just making sure that you can talk to an attorney. That
Yeah.
way you get to ask questions, you get to build rapport. If you are concerned about something, that's something that can come up. And also, you get to really learn the ins and outs of what is being done for you. So if you're filing a trademark application, you want to ask, like, what are the next steps? Where do we go from here? Well, what if this happens? Like, will you be there to support me? Because for a lot of these services, people don't understand where it starts and where it ends. And
Mhm.
so they finish their work, but people still think they have a lawyer. So just making sure that you're actually talking to someone is super, super important. So that's just the one thing that I wanted to add.
I love that. And we did get one question. If you have 5 minutes to answer this
Yes,
one,
I do.
this is on your trademark process. If you can touch on that briefly.
Sure. And this is something that I'll say you can find on the website. So the United States Patent and Trademark Office is what governs trademarks. That's where applications are filed. That's where you can search for Kanye, Rihanna, Donald Trump, whoever,
Right.
anybody's trademark is registered there. And so, with regard to the process, there's also a very thorough overview on the website. But quickly, I'll state that number one, we do a search regarding your proposed trademark. So we know what else is out there and the likelihood of whether your application will be accepted for registration. And then number two, you prepare and file your application. Number three, there may be office actions to respond to, and this is where it gets different for everyone. So, depending on what those office actions are, and those are really like issues that you need to resolve or arguments you need to respond to before your application can move to the next step. At that point, you either need to respond successfully or you abandon your application, and that's it. And if you get to the successful point, then there is a publication period where the USPTO lets everyone know your trademark application is coming down the line, and that's
Mhm.
other people's opportunity to oppose your trademark. So, for example, Kanye was filing a Yeezy logo mark not too long ago, and Walmart was like, hold up, that looks like our logo, right? So they argued that, Kanye shouldn't have his trademark approved because it would be confused with theirs, right? And I'm giving a really high level overview of this just so we can wrap this up. But once that period is over, then either you will get approved and you will get your trademark registered, or you will have to go through an opposition process where you have to respond to all of those arguments. And if you can come up with a unique resolution, then you will. And if you can't, then your trademark application might not survive. So it's a pretty lengthy and thorough process. And again, I'm just giving a really just like sky overview, but I would encourage you to go to the uspto.gov website and look at more information about trademarks.
Amazing. Great question. Again, thank you, Queen, for sharing your knowledge, your gems, your experience. Girl, just your light. Keep shining it in this world. We need it, okay? Y'all, as you are
Absolutely.
generating this generational wealth, make sure you protect it, okay? Protect it. If anything, protect it. And if you need support, legal counsel, then you know where to go because she's your girl, okay? Outside of that, y'all, we are out. Thank y'all for tuning in live, catching this on the replay. Until next time, take care, everyone.
Thank you.